Most of my videos are family friendly. This video will not be. If you watch this channel with your kids, this series, Cockpit Confessionals, is not one that you want to watch with them. I'm going to be talking about flight crew members doing things that involve nudity, things that sent people to jail.
We're going streaky! Yes!
So this is one that you're going to want to wait until they go to sleep to watch. Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 Gear is all about aviation. Today I'm here in Toronto, Italy, and this is the view from my hotel room. If this room looks familiar to you, it's because I filmed mean comments here a few months back. I don't think it was this exact room, but it was this hotel. As you sit in the airport and watch flight crew and cabin crew come in, you may be wondering, man, I wonder what kind of cool layovers they've been on, and I wonder where they're going to be going tonight. But after this video, you're going to be wondering, I wonder what their craziest crew story is. Before I get started, if you're a flight crew or cabin crew member and you have a crazy story of something that you did with your crew, send it to my Instagram at 74gear. I have a ton of stories, but eventually I'm going to run out. For the flight crew and cabin crew members that are involved in these following stories, I will say it right now, I did not witness nor participate in any of these activities. These are just stories that I've heard. And at the end of the day, even if I did see these things, I wouldn't be saying that I saw them because we all know
Snitches are bitches.
Let's get into it. If you have an Instagram account or you do any type of social media, you know that you're always trying to get creative and come up with cool pictures and cool stories of doing cool things in different places. One of my most liked pictures that I have on my Instagram was this one. This was from the emergency escape hatch of the 747 Dreamlifter, which I fly sometimes. And while this individual had a lot more balls than anything that I would ever do, he thought instead of taking a picture from the emergency escape hatch looking backwards, he would get up and go to the tail and take a picture going the other direction. So from the tail, looking out and seeing the actual hump on the front of the plane. Now I know almost nothing about photography, but from my perspective, going all the way to the tail and then taking a picture back, if it's sunny or the sun's out at all, you'd be really hard to see that shape, but he seemed to think it was going to be a great picture, so he climbed out through the emergency escape hatch, down the hump, and all the way to the tail. Well, once he got down there to the tail, he was thinking, oh, I'm going to take a bunch of photos and different angles.
Put your phone out, gotta hit them angles.
And you know, sometimes you get lost in the moment when you get all super artistic. Now remember, the flight deck of a 747 is 30 feet off the ground. And he has climbed out through that hatch and the roof and has walked to the back of the plane. While he's back there taking all these weird, crazy angles, it starts to rain. Now, as you can imagine, with rubber tennis shoes or things like that, you have a lot of grip because the plane is smooth, but you're gonna have no problem walking around up there. It's a pretty big surface. But once it starts raining, it gets a little bit more complicated. Well, it wasn't just sprinkling, it was actually downpouring, and he started to slowly walk up to the front of the plane. And the way he tells the story is, as he's walking up there, he's thinking, if I die in a 747 accident, and I'm the only idiot who died doing this, I'm going to feel so stupid.
Stupid is, stupid does, Mrs. Blue.
Well, he ended up quickly getting to the hump of the plane, and then he had to get up that hump. Now, a normal 747 hump isn't like the Dreamlifter with all those rivets that you saw in that photo. It's pretty smooth. But with all the rain, he wasn't going to be able to walk up it without sliding off and falling 30 plus feet onto the ground. So he had to lay down and then shimmy up in to get to the emergency hatch. When he got to the emergency hatch, it had been closed because the flight crew members that were in there didn't know he'd went out through the hatch, because who would do that? And so they closed it because it started raining. So now this guy is banging on the door so they can let him in. Finally, they open the door and are wondering, what are you doing out there? And he had to slide in head first to get into the plane. And what else could he say other than, I do it for the gram? In aviation, we have something called a repo flight. And what that means is if a flight gets canceled because of weather or maintenance or things like that, the pilots and flight attendants will end up moving the plane totally empty into position for later that day or the next day. Now, honestly, these types of flights are my favorite to do because the door gets to stay open. The flight attendants can come in and out whenever they want. They can bring you food. They can see how you're doing. They can come up and hang out with you guys. It reminds me a lot of what I imagine it was like back in the day when there was just a curtain they could come up and say hi whenever they wanted to. So it's fun because they're able to bring snacks and there's not a huge security protocol for you to get out and go to the bathroom or get out and stretch your legs. There's not a big problem to do that. You just have to have one of the flight attendants come up there. No big deal. Well, in this particular case, the captain was up there in the jump seat, which is one of the extra seats on the flight deck. The captain was talking to a nice young blonde flight attendant. He was trying to impress her, and she was telling him how she had plans to go to flight school in the next year. And so he was explaining different things on the systems of the aircraft, and she was asking a bunch of questions. And of course, he was really excited that she was so excited to talk to him about the plane. Yeah. So after a while, she eventually started to get bored with all the technical things that he was telling her, and he could see that she was getting ready to leave. And he said, "Oh, wait a second, come up here, come sit in the captain's seat." So she, of course, how often do you get to do that? Was like, yeah. So she jumped up and sat down in the captain's seat. Then they put the air traffic control on speaker so everyone in the flight deck could hear what was going on. And they let her make a few radio transmissions. When air traffic control was giving a heading or a switch to this frequency, they were teaching her how to do those types of radio communications.
Lucky.
After a little bit of that, she starts to get bored and says, "All right, well, I'll let you have your seat back." And he's like, No. Hey, do you want to fly? And so at 30,000 feet with nobody on board, he lets her disconnect the autopilot and start rocking the plane back and forth. Now, how much trouble would they get in if people found out that they did that? A lot of trouble. But in his mind, he thought, this is a great first flight lesson. When the pilots show up to work on the flight deck, the first 20-30 minutes is pretty busy because we're loading everything into the computer, we're checking all the route, we're double checking everything, the other pilot is checking what the first pilot did. There's lots of checks and balances. After that is out of the way, usually there's just light chatter. What did you do on the overnight? Where are you from? Stuff like that. Well, these pilots had just finished a 2-day layover in a city known for having a lot of women that partake in the oldest profession in history.
Hookers?
And when a guy shows up onto the flight deck and says something like, "Oh my gosh, you guys are not going to believe what happened last night," you're going to have my attention. Apparently this guy was walking down the street in the middle of the afternoon looking for a place to grab some lunch, and he walked past a store that was a massage parlor. Some of the girls outside the massage parlor convinced him to go in and get a massage, which I think he said an hour massage was something like $7. So he thought, even if the massage sucks, it's only $7, no big deal. Well, 30 minutes into the massage, the lady told him to flip over because he had been laying on his stomach. And once he flipped over, she gave him this symbol, which I think means, "Do you want me to peel your banana for your mid-massage snack for $10? I think that's what it means.
Wrong again.
Anyway, he agreed to give her an extra $10 or $20 to peel his banana, and she went to go dim the lights. After dimming the lights, she went and got a really heavy, warm towel and put that over his eyes. And then she asked him, "Do you want me to get you some massage oil?" Of course, it was included in the price, so he said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So she said, "Okay, I'll be right back." So after about 10 seconds, he hears her come back in, and she begins to peel his banana. Then he goes on to describe just how amazing it is, and it's the best banana peeling he's ever experienced in his life. Well, as he's finishing, he goes to lift the hot towel that's been resting on his eyes. As he lifts his hot, heavy towel to tell her what an amazing job that she's doing, because I guess he thought eye contact was the way to really let her know what a fantastic job she was doing, it wasn't her anymore. It was an old man. So there's this old man just wailing away on his business, and of course my thought is, what happened next? I had never been so interested in my life to hear what somebody had done on a layover, because this is a situation I had never imagined before. So he says, "Man, I was so close to finishing, and he was doing such a great job, I didn't feel it was right to tell him to stop." This leads to the moral of this story. I'm not going to judge you on what you do on your layovers or your lifestyle. I don't really care about that. That's not a big deal. But this was a 3-pilot flight deck, which means at all times there are going to be 2 pilots up there and 1 pilot's going to be on rest. And usually that's for a flight of 9, 10, 11 hours, something like that. You're usually going to have 3 pilots. Now, being a pilot is all about decision making. I don't know that that was the best decision in the world to tell that story as you boarded the plane and these pilots had 10 or 11 hours to go. Because as soon as that pilot went on rest, What do you think the other two pilots were joking about for the next 2.5 hours? Hanging out with flight crews on layovers is one of the best parts about being a flight crew member. Running into crews that you didn't expect to see is even better because it's like catching up with an old friend you didn't expect to see. A lot of times you are at the same hotel and you might see them at the bar or at a restaurant nearby. They'll come out and see you, and I really enjoy that aspect of being a flight crew member. Even if it's been a long day and you did 3 or 4 legs that day, as you get out of the van, if you see some of your friends that are down there at the bar or at the restaurant, usually you'll go say hi and talk to them for a little bit. As we're getting out of the van, I hear one of the flight attendants saying, "Oh, no, Bill, no." And I'm thinking, what is going on? I thought maybe somebody had gotten hurt or she had got some bad news about her friend Bill. Well, as I got out of the van, I looked at her face to see what was happening, and I realized she was staring at the lobby of the hotel. And when I went to look at the lobby of the hotel, I saw Bill, one of our pilots, totally naked, holding a Papa John's pizza.
Ooh, Papa John's!
Now, Bill was an older man, he was not in the best shape, and he really enjoyed having a lot of body hair. But one of the other things that caught my attention, and I'm really glad that he was wearing this one article of clothing, and that was high tops. High tops from like the 80s. I don't know if he's had them since the 80s or he's just really up on fashion, but they were old Reebok high tops. A few weeks later, I had a layover in that exact same city, and when I looked at my schedule, I noticed we weren't staying at that hotel anymore, and I'm not surprised why.
Actually, that would not surprise me.
But sometimes you're tired in your hotel room, and you're thinking, I don't really want to go out to get food, and you just think, I want to make an order for a delivery. Here's another story of an airline getting kicked out of a hotel. This crew was staying at a hotel in the Midwest. Let's call it Minnesota. It wasn't Minnesota, but let's just say that it was. Well, before a flight crew and the cabin crew will all meet up in the lobby. And the crew were standing down there waiting for the final flight attendant to show up. So I usually like to give the other pilot or other flight attendants a little bit of time to get down there, because I know sometimes you run a little bit behind. I know it takes me a while in the morning to get my hair done. But the 5 minutes had passed, and I went to the front desk. I said, hey, can you call this person's room? So they call a room. No answer. So I thought, well, maybe they're coming down. Give it another 3 or 4 minutes. All the while that we're talking there, the other flight attendant is texting her, who the girl is not responding, and the police are talking to the people at the front desk. I didn't pay any attention to it. So after that had happened, another 3 or 4 minutes had passed, I thought, I better call crew scheduling. Crew scheduling has the numbers of all of the people's cell phones. Now, they won't give us the number, but they will patch you through to the individual that you're trying to reach. So they go to patch me through to that individual, and while that's happening, I see the front desk lady waving the other pilot to come to the front desk. While she's waving him to the front desk, I'm on the phone waiting for this other flight attendant to pick up the phone, and they don't answer the phone. So I call crew scheduling back, and I say, hey, listen, they're not picking up the phone. They're not in their room. The other flight attendant's texting her. We can't get a response. The other flight attendant had told me that they had talked a few hours earlier, and the other flight attendant had invited her to go out and grab some food. But this flight attendant had food in her bag, so she wasn't going to go out and eat. So that other flight attendant said, all right, I'm going to go grab some food. I'll be back in a little bit. As soon as I hung up with the phone with scheduling, the other pilot waved me over and he said, bro, you've got to see this. So I walked over and I'm looking at the screen and I see the other flight attendant. And the policeman is there, the lady in the lobby is there, and both of us are watching. I waved the other flight attendant over and we see this other flight attendant, who was part of the crew, walk out of the lobby and into the hotel shuttle van and drive away.
Shut the front door.
The other flight attendant who's standing there goes, oh my gosh, is that, and let's just call her Mallory. Her name was not Mallory, but is that Mallory? I said, yeah, that's Mallory. Well, Mallory drove away in this car. Now, I had to call scheduling back because obviously we're not going to fly, missing a flight attendant. We were not at a base, so we were definitely not going anywhere for a while. After it was all said and done, I ended up hearing several days later they found Mallory in New Mexico. And if you know how close Minnesota is to New Mexico, it's about 1,000 miles away.
I feel the need for speed.
If you enjoy these aviation stories, you're going to love these aviation memes. I'll put a link to it right here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.